the coffee that cost nothing. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain as Emma Mitchell walked slowly toward the small cafe on 5th Street, her worn leather purse clutched tightly in her hands. Inside that purse was exactly $7.43, her carefully counted budget for the week's groceries, minus the $2 coffee she had reluctantly agreed to buy for this blind date. At 26, Emma had long ago stopped believing in fairy tale endings. Life as a single woman working 2 part-time jobs, mornings at the local bookstore and evenings cleaning office buildings, had taught her to be practical about everything, especially romance. But her friend Sarah from the bookstore had been so insistent, so convinced that Emma needed to get back out there after her last relationship had ended badly 8 months ago. "He's a nice guy, I promise," Sarah had said, waving her hands enthusiastically while restocking the romance section. "My cousin Jake met him at that business networking thing downtown. Successful, kind, and he specifically asked to meet someone who wasn't, materialistic." Emma had almost laughed at that. Materialistic was definitely not a word anyone would use to describe her. Her entire wardrobe could fit in a single closet. Her car was 15 years old and made concerning noises when she turned corners. And her idea of a big splurge was buying name-brand cereal instead of the store brand. Now, standing outside Cafe Luna with its warm, yellow light spilling onto the sidewalk, Emma second-guessed her decision to come. The cafe looked more expensive than she had hoped. The kind of place where coffee came in ceramic cups instead of paper ones, where people lingered over pastries that probably cost more than she spent on lunch for 3 days. Through the window, she could see a man sitting alone at a corner table, checking his phone with the controlled patience of someone who was used to waiting. He was handsome in a quiet way, dark hair with silver at the temples, kind eyes, and a navy blue sweater that looked soft and expensive. This had to be Marcus Wellington, her blind date. Emma took a deep breath and pushed open the cafe door, the small bell above it announcing her arrival with a gentle chime. The man looked up immediately, and his face broke into a smile that transformed his entire appearance from serious businessman to someone approachable and warm. "Emma?" he asked, standing up as she approached the table. "That's me," she replied, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. "You must be Marcus." "It's wonderful to meet you," Marcus said, pulling out a chair for her with old-fashioned courtesy that made Emma feel both special and nervous. "Thank you for agreeing to this. I know blind dates can be awkward." As Emma settled into her seat, she glanced around the cafe with growing anxiety. The menu board behind the counter listed coffee drinks with names she didn't recognize and prices that made her stomach clench. Even a simple coffee was $5, more than twice what she had budgeted. "What would you like to drink?" Marcus asked, already signaling to the barista. "Their cappuccinos are supposed to be excellent, or if you prefer something sweeter, I hear the caramel macchiato is popular." Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had practiced what she would say during the walk over, but now, faced with Marcus's expectant smile and the reality of those prices, the words stuck in her throat. She began, then stopped, looking down at her hands folded in her lap. The silence stretched between them, and she could feel Marcus's attention focused on her with genuine concern. "I can't afford coffee," she said finally, the words rushing out in a whisper. "I'm sorry. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I only budgeted $2 for this. And everything here costs so much more, and I can't—" She couldn't bring herself to look at Marcus's face, certain she would see pity or disappointment there. Instead, she heard his chair scrape against the floor as he moved closer. "Hey," Marcus said gently, his voice so kind that Emma finally looked up. "That's not ridiculous at all. Actually, it's refreshing." "Refreshing?" Marcus smiled, and there was something in his expression that Emma couldn't quite identify. Not pity, but understanding mixed with what looked almost like relief. "2 coffees, please," Marcus called to the barista. "Whatever your house blend is, nothing fancy." "Marcus, you don't have to—" "I want to," he said simply. "Besides, I have a confession, too. I wasn't entirely honest about myself either." Emma frowned, not sure what he could mean. Everything about Marcus suggested success. His clothes, his confident manner, the expensive watch she had noticed when he checked the time. When your friend's cousin told you I was successful, what did you think that meant? Marcus asked as the barista brought over 2 simple ceramic mugs filled with regular coffee. I don't know, Emma replied honestly. Someone with a good job, I guess. Stable. Marcus wrapped his hands around his coffee mug, and Emma noticed that despite the expensive watch, his hands looked like they knew real work, not soft and pampered as she might have expected. I am successful. In the way most people measure these things, Marcus said slowly. I own a company, I have more money than I need, I live in a house that's probably too big for one person. But Emma, I haven't been on a real date in 3 years, and I specifically asked Jake to introduce me to someone who wouldn't care about any of that. Emma studied his face, trying to understand what he was really saying. I have a 7-year-old daughter, Lily, Marcus continued. She's been the center of my world since her mother died when she was 4. Most of the women I meet seem more interested in my bank account than in understanding that my daughter and I come as a package deal. That must be incredibly difficult, Emma said softly, and she meant it. Raising a child alone while trying to date? It is. Which is why, when Jake told me about his friend who worked at a bookstore and couldn't care less about impressing anyone with expensive dinners, I thought maybe I'd finally found someone real. They talked for 2 hours over those simple cups of coffee, and Emma found herself relaxing in ways she hadn't expected. Marcus didn't ask about her job in the way people usually did, with barely concealed judgment about her lack of career ambition. Instead, he asked about the books she recommended to customers, about the office workers whose spaces she cleaned and the small kindnesses she noticed in their desk photos and personal items. You see people, Marcus observed as Emma described helping an elderly night security guard practice English by reading him passages from the novels she brought to work. Really see them, not just their circumstances. Don't most people do that? Emma asked. No, Marcus said with a slight smile. They really don't. As the evening wound down, Marcus insisted on walking Emma to her car, and Emma felt a moment of panic as they approached her ancient Honda Civic with its dented bumper and duct-taped side mirror. That's a reliable car, Marcus said approvingly as Emma unlocked the door. Hondas run forever if you take care of them. It's not much to look at, Emma replied, waiting for the inevitable comparison to whatever luxury vehicle he probably drove. Emma, can I tell you something? The last woman I dated showed up in a BMW that cost more than most people make in a year, spent the entire dinner talking about her shopping trips to Europe, and when I mentioned my daughter, she actually asked if I could arrange for childcare so we could have more flexibility with our schedules. Emma stared at him. She said that? She said that. You, on the other hand, spent 20 minutes asking thoughtful questions about Lily's interests and suggesting books she might enjoy. You worried about spending $5 on coffee because it would impact your grocery budget, which tells me you understand the value of money and responsibility. 3 weeks later, Emma stood in the kitchen of Marcus's admittedly large house, helping 7-year-old Lily Frost cupcakes for her school bake sale. The kitchen was beautiful. Granite countertops, professional-grade appliances, windows that overlooked a garden, but what made it feel like home was Lily's artwork covering the refrigerator and the comfortable chaos of a father and daughter who clearly spent real time together. Emma, do you think these cupcakes look fancy enough? Lily asked seriously, holding up a chocolate cupcake with slightly lopsided pink frosting. I think they look perfect because they're made with love, Emma replied, helping Lily add rainbow sprinkles. Sometimes the best things aren't the fanciest things. That's what Daddy says too, Lily said, nodding sagely. He says you can't buy the important stuff. Later that evening, after Lily was in bed and the cupcakes were safely packed for school, Emma and Marcus sat on his back porch, sharing a bottle of wine that had probably cost more than Emma used to spend on groceries in a month. But the expense didn't make her uncomfortable anymore, because she had learned that Marcus's wealth wasn't about showing off. It was about security, about being able to provide for his daughter and share generously with people he cared about. Can I ask you something? Emma said, curled up in the porch swing beside Marcus. Anything. That first night at the cafe when I said I couldn't afford coffee, you didn't look surprised. It was almost like you expected it. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. Jake told me more about you than I admitted at the time. He told me you worked 2 jobs, that you'd been through some difficult times, that you were the kind of person who would rather stay home. The